This should be a pretty interesting comparison. Luna Ultra versus Pocket 4P versus iPhone 16 Pro Max with the DJI OM7 mobile gimbal. Let's see which one of these cameras produces the best image quality results for you. Honestly, I'm making this comparison because I know most of you will have access to one of the latest smartphones, which should have pretty good cameras built into them. And you're probably wondering, why should I spend $700 on the Luna Ultra or the Pocket 4P when I can just spend about $100, $200 on a mobile gimbal for my smartphone and more or less get the same results? Yes, the setup with the phone is bulkier, heavier, more finicky to use, but if the image quality is somewhat comparable, maybe it's going to work for you just fine. So I'm going to do today basically a couple of image quality comparisons between these cameras. I'm going to start with the standard picture profiles, which I'm using right now, and then later on I'm going to switch to the log picture profiles, and I am not going to do any manipulation in post-production. Basically the footage, what you see even with the log picture profiles, is basically what you get. And by the way, with the iPhone I'm using the Blackmagic camera application because it's a bit easier to use with my Apple Watch, so I can preview the camera basically because I don't have like a front-facing screen with the rear camera of the iPhone, which produces the best image quality on any smartphone out there pretty much. And also I set the codec to the ProRes Photo 2 LT because it is a bit better than HEVC and H.264, and it doesn't take as much space as ProRes Photo 2 HQ, basically because I don't have really an SSD for the iPhone at the moment. And of course all of the settings are going to be displayed somewhere on the screen. I'm going to use only automatic settings throughout this video: auto white balance, auto exposure, and all this stuff. And also I'm using with the mobile gimbal of the iPhone the tracking feature, so I can move my hand like so, and basically the gimbal is going to follow me around. So let's see. Stabilization should be amazing with the iPhone because I'm also using the stabilization in the Blackmagic camera app just to smoothen out the edges basically. So not only you get stabilization from the gimbal, but also from the software at the same time. Let's see which camera has the best skin tones. The iPhone has really good skin tone performance. It always looks pretty much accurate. Alright, so right now I'm using the 3x cameras on the Pocket cameras and then the 5x camera on my iPhone. And honestly, it was a nightmare to set up this shot with the iPhone because the Blackmagic app on my Apple Watch is glitching. It's not really working at the moment, and also it was kind of hard to set up the tracking on the mobile gimbal to put myself basically correctly in frame. Hopefully right now I'm in the center of the frame because I cannot really see anything. I'm using the rear camera on the iPhone and I don't have really a preview on my Apple Watch, so hopefully it is okay in terms of like overall framing, but it's definitely a more cumbersome experience than using one of these Pocket cameras where you can see everything right away. Just tap yourself on the screen and basically it's going to follow you around. And also these focal lengths are different. You get about 60-70 millimeters on the Pocket cameras compared to 120 millimeters on the iPhone, but soon I'm going to also set the focal length on the Pocket cameras to 5x, just so you can see how these cameras compare with the same focal length basically. All right, so now I switched to 5x roughly on my DJI Pocket 4P, and then it's still set to 5x on the iPhone, and I'm using 6x on the Luna Ultra because I can't really find a way to set it to 5x. This should be somewhat comparable on all of these cameras, and I can definitely see the annoying, stepping mechanism of the Luna Ultra. It's like moving in steps instead of like being fluid like on the Osmo Pocket 4P. I think it is actually smoother on the iPhone than with the Luna Ultra. Wow, this is terrible. This is horrible. Let's do somewhat of a close-up just to see the quality. Hopefully I'm in frame with the iPhone. Why is the Luna Ultra like twitching like crazy? All right, now let's do like a low light comparison in my studio. I do have some lights in here, but none of them really, shining light on me. They're basically like bouncing from the ceiling just to raise the ambience light in the room. So this should give you like a rough idea how these cameras compare in a somewhat of a low light situation. And I'm still using like automatic exposure settings on all of these cameras. And then the ISO range is set to the maximum on all of them. So that's basically 100 to 25,600 on the Pocket 4P. And then automatic on the iPhone and also automatic on the Luna Ultra. Let's make it maybe a bit more extreme. I can turn off this light in here so you can see which one produces the most amount of noise basically. Theoretically, the iPhone should be the worst because it has the smallest sensor, but maybe because of the software, the algorithm, it's going to have the cleanest noise reduction applied basically. This is the dark corner of the studio. Here you'll be able to see the noise difference and grain difference between these cameras the best, I feel like. Blackmagic camera watch app is not working. Hopefully I am in frame. All right, now let's do a test in low light with the telephoto lenses. So I'm using 3x on the pocket cameras and then 5x on my iPhone, just to see how these cameras perform in a lower light situation. So now I'm going to switch again to 5x. Let me actually turn off this light in here again, just to make it a bit harder for the cameras. All right, and now I switched to 5x on the Pocket 4P, and then I'm still using 5x on the iPhone, and then 6x on the Luna Ultra. All right, now here is how these cameras compare in a studio environment when having like a proper key light setup on the main subject. Just in case if you are interested to use one of these cameras basically as your main studio camera. Obviously the lighting setup in here is not perfect, especially like the background, but it should give you like a rough idea how these cameras compare more or less in a studio setup. All right, and now I switched to the log profiles of these cameras. So D-Log 2 on the Pocket 4P, Apple log on the iPhone, and then iLog on the Luna Ultra. And I am overexposing by 2 stops on the Pocket 4P and 1 stop on the Luna Ultra just to get the shadows as clean as possible. And I'm exposing with 0.0 EV, basically with the iPhone, because honestly, I don't really have experience with Apple log footage when using automatic settings. I know how to use it with manual settings, but with automatic settings, I'm not really sure what is the best value to use. So I want to be as safe as possible, basically. I think honestly, D-Log 2 is going to be the best here in terms of like dynamic range performance, flexibility in post-production and so on. You can also heavily overexpose D-Log 2 or underexpose and then still be able to recover a lot of information in post-production without introducing any color artifacts or noise when underexposing. iLog though is not bad on the Luna Ultra. It is pretty good, just not as good as D-Log 2. And Apple log is also pretty good in my opinion, but again, I don't think it is as good as D-Log 2 on the Pocket 4P. Maybe in terms of like colors, especially skin tones, iPhone has fantastic skin tone performance. Let me try to stress the dynamic range performance here. Let me see if this still works. Yeah, seems like it's working fine. And by the way, I'm using the base ISO on the Pocket 4P for D-Log 2, which is 1600. This is where you get the widest dynamic range performance. And I'm also using ISO 400 on the Luna Ultra, which I believe is the base ISO for the Luna Ultra basically, and I'm not really sure what is the base ISO for the iPhone because Apple doesn't want to tell us. They don't release any white papers for Apple log and so on, so we kind of have to guess. I think this scene in here is going to be easy for all the cameras. All right, and now again, I switched to the 3x cameras on the pocket cameras and then the 5x camera on my iPhone. And I'm using now D-Log on the Pocket 4P because D-Log 2 is not available with the 3x camera on this camera. And I'm still using iLog on the Luna Ultra. And now it seems like the Blackmagic watch app is working fine. And at this focal length for the iPhone, I think you'll get more or less same background blur, maybe slightly less as the Luna Ultra. So let me just do like tracking tests, a bit more of them. And soon I'm going to zoom in to about 5x on the pocket cameras, although the focal length is still going to be slightly different, but just to match between all of them, you know, so you can clearly see the difference basically. Let me try to stand still so you can see like the sharpness difference, skin tone colors, and all that stuff. All right, so now again, I'm using 6x on the Luna Ultra, 5x on the iPhone, and then 5.2x on the Pocket 4P. Man, the the dance with the Luna Ultra is awful. It looks awful. What is this? This is terrible. Look how smooth it is on the Pocket 4P compared to the Luna Ultra. And I think even the mobile gimbal from DJI is doing a better job. But anyway, let me stand in here roughly. Yeah, it is more or less the same. I think it's actually slightly tighter on the Luna Ultra, but it should give like a rough idea which one is the sharpest, which one produces the, you know, the blurriest background. Let's stand still in here maybe. All right, here is a low light comparison now with the log profiles of these cameras. I am overexposing with the Pocket 4P by 2.3 stops to get cleaner shadows, and I'm still using the base ISO of 1600. And then I'm using Apple log with 0.0 EV compensation, automatic settings, and so on. And with the Luna Ultra, I stopped using the base ISO 400 because it is not enough to expose for this room, basically, while also overexposing by an extra stop. So I'm using ISO automatic instead. So let's see how these cameras compare in their log shooting modes. I feel like the D-Log 2 profile on the Pocket 4P is slightly cleaner in low light than the Luna Ultra, but I'm not really sure how it compares to Apple log because honestly, I've never really used Apple log in low light. So let's see. Let's see. All right, and now let's see how these cameras compare in low light with the 3x lenses on the pocket cameras and then the 5x lens on the iPhone. Obviously, I'm using D-Log on the Pocket 4P because D-Log 2 is not available, but I am overexposing by plus 1.7 stops to get slightly cleaner results. And I'm still overexposing by 1 stop with the Luna Ultra, and then the EV is set to 0 on the iPhone. All right, and now I switch to like 5.3, 5.4x on the Pocket 4P, and then 6x on the Luna Ultra. All right, now let's compare these cameras in the studio with a proper key light setup on the main subject, just in case if you are interested to use one of these cameras as your studio camera, basically. I have a feeling the Pocket 4P is going to be the best because from my experience, it delivers sharper and cleaner results than iLog on the Luna Ultra, especially when using these cameras in this kind of environment. And the iPhone is going to be okay, I guess, but because of the smaller sensor, you're gonna get less light into the camera, and also the background is going to be sharper than on the Pocket 4P, basically. But maybe in terms of like noise, it's going to look more or less the same. I have a feeling though, Apple log is going to look slightly cleaner than iLog on the Luna Ultra, but let's see. All right, now let me summarize my opinion about these three cameras. So first of all, when using the standard picture profiles, I was actually pretty surprised by the colors on the iPhone. I think the colors on the iPhone looked a bit better than the Luna Ultra or the Osmo Pocket 4P, especially skin tones. They looked a bit more natural to me and just more pleasing overall compared to the other cameras. And also it seems like you get a slightly blurrier background with the iPhone compared to the Pocket cameras. Maybe it's because of the tighter 24mm focal length, or maybe it's because of the slightly lower aperture of f1.7 when using the main camera. So if you want like a blurrier background, maybe you want to consider the iPhone with like a mobile gimbal setup. All right, next, in terms of like the log profiles, my favorite one is still D-Log 2 on the Pocket 4P. I think it produces the widest dynamic range performance, and also when you backlight the subject, it retains the colors and information in the shadows a bit better than the other cameras. I mean, Apple log and iLog on the Luna Ultra are pretty good, but not as good as D-Log 2 on the Pocket 4P. So if you are after the best camera for like color grading and post-production, you will definitely enjoy the Pocket 4P the most. Now, when it comes to the telephoto lenses, honestly, my favorite one is the Pocket 4P because it looks the most natural out of the box without doing anything. And also, when you move around the frame, it was by far the most reliable, especially compared to the Luna Ultra. I mean, the iPhone with the gimbal is also fairly reliable when it comes to tracking, but it's just the 120mm focal length is a bit too tight, and also you don't get like a selfie monitor when using the telephoto camera. So maybe you have a watch, you can use that as a monitor, but that's not really reliable. And then maybe you'll have to buy like a wireless screen, which makes the entire setup a bit more cumbersome and tedious. So I feel like the experience with the telephoto lens on the Pocket 4P is going to be, by far the best, produces the best image with the blurriest background in my opinion, and also it is by far the easiest one to set up overall. And now if you're going to use these cameras in the studio like I'm doing with all of them right now, I feel like the Pocket 4P is going to be the best when using the log profile, because it is clearly better when it comes to dynamic range. Like I saw with the iPhone, I was like clipping highlights on my skin, and also with the Luna Ultras, it was like the contrast was a bit more strong on these cameras. And with the Osmo Pocket 4P, I had more information to play around with to get like a nicer transition from like shadows to highlights basically, and the image overall looks more clean when it comes to the overall colors when using like automatic exposure and white balance settings. So if you want to just put one of these cameras on a tripod in your studio, turn on a couple of lights and basically press the record button, and that's basically it, you will definitely enjoy the Pocket 4P the most. The iPhone lost me. So if you're going to use one of these cameras in the studio, I feel like the Pocket 4P is going to be the best when shooting with the log profile. Maybe if you're going to shoot with the standard profile, it's going to be more or less the same, but when shooting in log, I feel like the experience is the best with the Pocket 4P. All right, so anyhow, I hope you find this video to be informative and useful. Let me know down below which camera you think is going to work best for you. And if you have any suggestions for new videos, also let me know down below, because honestly, I've made this video in here because one of you recommended to, make this comparison basically, and I think it is actually really interesting. Anyhow, thank you for watching, and if you are interested in my iLog LUTs or D-Log 2 LUTs or my DaVinci Resolve Power Grade for color grading, links are going to be down below if you do want to support this channel. Anyhow, thanks for watching and bye bye.